As with anything we do in IT, there's standards. And especially in networking, we must follow different standards that they give us, whether it be cabling or what have you. We have a standard called the OSI model. The OSI model is really just a conceptual blueprint, a guideline, if you will, to show us how to understand the flow of information and to troubleshoot when something may happen. Where exactly is the problem happening? For your certification exam, we need to know the different layers of the OSI model and a brief description of them, meaning what protocols may work on that particular layer and what devices may work on that particular layer, to include the order of encapsulation, which we'll get into in a little bit. Now, you see here that we see the application, presentation, session, transport, network, data link, and physical. Those are your 7 layers. From top to bottom, 7 is the application, 6 presentation, all the way down to physical, which is number 1. So 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, now we still separate this even further just to help us out and understand what's going on, especially in the order of encapsulation. We have actually separated into the upper layers, which are the application, presentation, and session, and the lower layers, which is transport, network, data link, and physical. So they're actually separated into 2 parts, the upper 3 layers and the lower 4 layers. So we can better understand what's going on. Now, it's easy, this is a little acronym or mnemonic device that we use to remember the layers of the OSI. If you just look at the first letter of the sentence, all people seem to need Domino's Pizza. A, application, P, presentation, S, session, T, transport, N, network, D, data link, and P, physical. So this will help you when testing to actually say, hey, all people seem to need Domino's Pizza, and you'll know where you're at. A being layer 7, P being layer 1, and you'll get that with not a problem. So remember that little mnemonic device. It's really going to help you out because you need to know the order of the OSI model matched up with their numbered layer. Now, the upper layers of the OSI, we have the application layer, layer 7, deals with data, right? And you can see that in red, all of these upper 3 layers are data. That red lettering right there, that red text is called a PDU, Protocol Data Unit. All right, and what is that? That Protocol Data Unit actually communicates with its peer layer on the other side, meaning who it's communicating with. All right, so it can understand what it's sending over. So with the application layer, which is the one closest to the user, the one you're interacting with when you're accessing the network, such as a browser, let's say, you're using HTTP port 80 because you're going online, so you're accessing some sort of a network, an internetwork or internet, all right, or intra-network for a network within the company, but you're using port 80. Or if you're doing an FTP, you're transferring files over through the FTP file transfer protocol, port 21, Telnet, port 23, or you can do SSH as well, that will be port 22. So this application layer, or this layer, deals with those particular types of protocols that access the network. Do not be confused with Word, Excel, things like that. Those are not application layer protocols. Those are interfaces, just like your browser, just like your Outlook client. Your Outlook client uses SMTP to send mail, POP to receive mail. Those protocols, then yes, those protocols belong in the application layer. Presentation layer, which is layer 6, again, deals with data, but it deals with the format of the data, right? With the encryption, is it compressed? Is this going to be an ASCII for computers? Is it going to be an EBCDIC as far as mainframes? Are you sending me a JPEG or some sort of RTF file? Is this a secure file? Is this being compressed or anything like that? That's what the presentation layer is for. Session layer, simple. 2 words, dialogue control. It begins, maintains, and ends sessions with its peer or whoever you're talking to, really. It maintains that session. And you can have multiple sessions because it does separate the applications. It keeps them separate from each other. So you can have multiple dialogues going on But again, it maintains it. That's the job of the session layer. And still, in these upper three layers, the data itself is still raw, still that big document hasn't been broken up yet. Now, in the lower four layers, that's when we start breaking things up. That's what you see here at the transport layer deals with segmentation, right? That's layer 4, segmentation. Here we have the TCP protocol, connection-oriented, UDP, which is connection-less oriented. We have windowing, and what does windowing mean? The protocol actually opens and closes a window to see how many bytes of information it can handle. So it's adjusting to be able to get that particular information across. An analogy would be that there's two people, one is on top of a truck, the other one's at the bottom, and the one on top is just throwing boxes out at the other one. And the one at the bottom, the receiver, is the one that's in charge and says, hey, I can only handle so much. So then it tells it, only send me one box at a time, or one byte at a time, or 2 bytes at a time. So the receiver has that control. So this is what happens at layer 4, right? And that's deal with acknowledgments, negative acknowledgments, all these things so we can make sure that the message is received correctly. Now, network layer, fun layer, layer 3. Now we deal with packets. That's the PDU there. We deal with IP. What do you mean IP? IP version 4, IP version 6, the IP addressing that we're going to use within our devices. The logical part of the network, right? So we'll also deal with routing protocols, RIP, EIGRP, OSPF. These routing protocols are the ones that we deal with when we work at this particular layer. And obviously the devices that work there are routers. Now you will hear, hey, I have a layer 3 switch. What does that mean? Well, that means that you have a switch with routing capabilities. But for your exam, don't even concern yourself. It's going to be straightforward layer 3 devices, which are routers, period. The one below that, it's the data link layer, layer 2. Now this one, when we're talking about certification purposes, again, layer 2 switches, deals with frames, only MAC addresses, only switches that work with here. No layer 3 or anything like that. Straight layer 2 devices that only build MAC address tables that deal with the MAC addressing of all the devices. That is it. Okay, now the data link layer will be subdivided, which again, you may see or they may ask you, into 2 sublayers, which is called the logical link control and the media access control. So you have the LLC and the MAC. These are sublayers that exist in the data link layer. But again, something for your knowledge, something you can reference. But as far as the test, they may ask you, they may not. I'm not very strong on that question that they're going to get that deep. The physical layer, layer 1, bits, zeros and ones, right? They finally came out the wire. What type of wire? Any type of cabling, where it be Ethernet cabling with category 5, twisted pair cabling. It could be fiber, it could be coaxial, whatever type of cabling, that's at layer 1. Hubs and repeaters, which really are not even used anymore. So really devices that don't make much decisions, they regenerate it and send it through. Now, 2 things that are important that work at the data link layer and physical layer are wide area network protocols, such as frame relay or MPLS or PPP. These type of protocols do work at these 2 layers. Even wireless works at these 2 layers. But again, this is something that when you're asked a question, multiple choice question on the test, hey, what works on these layers? And they'll give you, these particular choices, you know which to choose from. Now, there's something called encapsulation. What is encapsulation? It says there, the process of passing information down the OSI. It's getting the document ready to be sent out the wire. And as it goes down through each layer puts its information. The application says, well, we're using the HTTP protocol. The presentation layer says, well, we're sending a picture out, and we're going to compress this picture not to take up bandwidth. Then the session layer says, hey, well, we need to start a dialogue then with our peer computer. And then the transport layer says, well, okay, we're going to use TCP to make sure it's connection-oriented to do any error checking and things like that. Then the network says, well, it's across our own subnet, so we need to use a routing protocol to get across. Data link layer, once it gets to the Ethernet portion of the network, it deals with the MAC addressing of the devices. And then finally, The physical layer says, okay, it's going out category 5, category 6. So it's a fiber, it's a coaxial. So it understands that level. So when it sends it out to the cable, it knows how to place all the information and send it out that way. So that is encapsulation. Now, how do you remember the order of encapsulation? And there it is. Data, 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 segments, packets, frames, and bits. Really, all you have to say is data, segments, packets, frames, and bits. But my God, how many times do you got to say that in order to remember it? Well, I got something for you. Don't some people fear binary, or don't stop pouring free beverages. These are some mnemonic devices that you can use to remember the PDUs of each layer.